Welcome to the graveyard. I'm Violet Hummingbird, and this is day 23 of Spooky October, where every day for the month of October, I read you a true spooky story every evening. So be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell if you don't want to miss another story. And today, if you are watching the video, I have some footage of the graveyard that I usually like to read these stories in, and let me know if you see anything funny, any sort of figures or orbs or anything like that. Otherwise, if you're just listening, I really hope you enjoy this story. Today's story is by Siegfried, and I will be discovering it with you for the first time as I haven't read it all the way through myself yet. So let's go ahead and get started. The night before January 13th, 1992, while I was sleeping, Matthew visited me in a dream. He was outside the school when I got off the school bus. I looked at him and asked him why he was out. I added that we would be late for school if we didn't hurry up. He looked at me, his hands inside his pockets, his right foot kicking pebbles on the ground. He said he was waiting for me to say goodbye. I was puzzled by what he said, and I asked him why. He just stared at me and then walked away. The school bell rang, and I woke up realizing that the sound was coming from my alarm clock. It was weird, but I thought no more of it. The school bus arrived and picked me up. Everybody was unusually silent. I sat in the front seat, minding my own business, when my classmate Hazel sat beside me. I asked her what was going on in school. I'd been absent for a week due to illness. She looked at me, and I realized that she had something important to say, but just couldn't say it. I asked her what it was. Before she spoke, she sighed and then told me she had something bad to say. I told her to just say whatever it was. She told me that Matthew was found dead in his room late last night. My mind went blank. I couldn't think, speak, or move. I was in shock. I came out of my catatonic state when I saw Matthew's house. I told the bus driver to pull over. He did, but only after I stopped yelling. I stepped out of the bus despite the protestations of Hazel and my busmates. I ran to Matthew's house and rang the doorbell as hard as I could. His mother opened the door and saw me. She hugged me and told the driver to tell the principal that I was with her before leading me inside the house. In their receiving room, I saw Matthew lying in an open casket. I ran to him, held his hand, and just stared at his face. She asked me if I was all right. I told her I wanted to be alone with him. She left, and I stood there holding his left hand. I don't know how long I stood there in front of his casket when I felt someone touch my left shoulder. I looked around and saw it was Matthew standing beside me. I asked him if he visited me last night. He just nodded. He looked at his body lying in the casket, and I asked him why. He didn't reply, and then he was gone. I kept calling his name until his mom came to the room. She hugged me and told me to calm down. I told her that Matthew was here, but she kept telling me that my classmate was dead. I insisted that he visited me, but she said it was just grief manifesting. I assured her that it wasn't just my imagination, and she hugged me again as I broke down in tears. 10 months passed since we laid Matthew in his final resting place. I'd learned to accept what happened to him and move on with my life, and I was busy with college. Everything was great until the day of Matthew's birthday, November 13th. 2 days prior to his birthday, I was rushed to the hospital. I couldn't breathe, and the right side of my body was temporarily paralyzed. In the emergency room, the doctors told me the immobility that I was experiencing was due to insufficiency of oxygen. An hour after they put a nebulizer in my mouth, I was able to breathe on my own. The doctors couldn't understand why it happened. I had outgrown my asthma, and I was 7 years old. They kept me in the hospital for observation before signing my release forms the following day. 2 days passed, and I was feeling great. But my mom insisted that I needed plenty of rest, and she wouldn't let me out of my bed. Morning of November 14th, after eating my breakfast and taking my medicine, I went back to my room and returned to sleep. I heard someone calling my name, and when I looked at the window, I saw Matthew. I asked him what he was doing here. He told me to come to the window. I got up from the bed and walked to the window. When I got to the window, he reached for my hand and held it lightly. He began pulling my hand through the window. I told him to let go. I was hurting. He said he couldn't because he was taking me with him. I told him that I didn't want to go with him. I was frightened. I knew that whoever that creature was, it wasn't Matthew. I started to fight back, trying to free my hand, but he was too strong. Then I felt someone grab me around my abdomen. It was my friend Glenn. He had his arms around me and was pulling me back from the window. After a hard struggle, I was finally free. I asked Glenn if I was dreaming. He asked me how I could be dreaming when my eyes were wide open. I was panting and shaking hard from fear. He told me he had just come to visit to see how I was doing. When he was about to knock, he heard me screaming, and that's how he found me by the window, with my right arm stretched outside, struggling with someone or something he couldn't see. Glenn called my mom and told her what happened. The same day, my mom called a priest and asked him to exorcise the entire house. A week later, when I was feeling better, I went to the cemetery and visited Matthew. I said a prayer and asked for his forgiveness for forgetting his birthday. A month passed and everything was back to normal until the night before my birthday. Matthew visited me for the last time in my sleep, telling me not to worry about him. He told me he was in a better place. So let me know in the comments down below what you thought of that spooky story. And if you have a spooky story of your own that's true and you don't mind me sharing it, feel free to email it to me at heytherehummingbird@runbox.com. I'll also have my email down in the description below. Please give this video a like, and I will see you tomorrow night for another spooky story. And until then, happy spooky October.